the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen.
Okay, welcome back from lunch and break, everybody. I hope that the first half was beneficial, and now we're going to be talking more across the lifespan, what to expect from the different ages and age groups that you work with. And this is similar to the FMP course that I give usually on odd number years around Labor Day. So you may have seen some of this material before, or if you take FMP, you may see it there. But in general, when we teach development at the university level, it's a semester-long course. So we're going to try to cover this in the next hour and then have discussions as well in relation to that. So obviously, if you have more questions, feel free to ask, because we're just going to kind of gloss over it at this point. Okay, so we're going to talk about, across the lifespan, a spiritual and psychological guide on how to become more resilient, what to expect at different age groups, because I'm assuming you're all serving different ages and different populations and things like that within those age groups. So a spiritual and psychological guide here is what we're hoping for. And think about what your goals are for service of these individuals that you're serving, no matter their age, no matter their level of development. Usually it's to build a sense of responsibility in them, a greater spiritual life. Their parents may also are hoping for good career and academic successes. You want them to develop good relationships, not only moving towards marriage, but good friendships as well, and good kind of camaraderie around those kids themselves. We also want their emotional health to be good, of course. We want them to have good well-being, a meaningful life, and morals and values, of course, above all things. And no matter what our plans are, we know from this verse, this lovely verse that says that God knows He has the plans for us. Plans, declares the Lord, to prosper and not harm you. Plans to give us hope and a future. And these plans are ultimately God's plans, regardless of what our plans are. Again, He has a plan and a future for us. And our job as servants is to be a guide and a light. These are pictures I took at Portland, Maine, almost 10 years ago now. And it was a beautiful sunny day, and this is one of the oldest lighthouses in the country. And it got me thinking to how we have to be a light and a guide. Both in my profession, I have to be a light and a guide, but also in all the services that we do, we have to be a light and a guide. And if you look at the purpose of a lighthouse, is to guide ships into the harbor safely, even if there are storms, even if there's fog, even if there's weather, even if there's any of those things, it still has to be a light and a guide. So think about that in terms of your service. And then when I went inside of this lighthouse, they had a little placard there, a little bit of a history about the lighthouse. Again, it's one of the oldest lighthouses in the country. And there was a placard there that talked about a major incident that occurred where there was an accident around this lighthouse. And what ended up happening is a ship actually crashed, and there were 20 lives lost and millions of dollars worth of damage. I think it was back in the 1800s or something like that. And they found when they did some research on how this accident could happen, because again, the lighthouse's job is to guide so that this does not happen. But this is exactly what happened, an accident. They found that the lighthouse was doing its job correctly. It was lighting and all of those things, but it was 20 feet shorter than where it should be. So all they did was raise it 20 feet more, and then magically there were no more accidents, right? So sometimes we don't have to do something massive or big to make changes. Just small adjustments can make a big change and return us back to the service that we're supposed to be doing. And this requires us, again, as we were talking, as we did in the last session, to be balanced, to be patient, to be perseverant. And interestingly, just down the shore from where this lighthouse was, people were putting together these elaborate sculptures, very focused on what they're doing to build these structures to make them stand. Some were like arches and some were like towers. And so, it takes balance and perseverance to get the results that we want. Our job is to kind of make fruitful trees, right? Christ told us that we will be known by our fruits. And so everything that we are trying to do is to build fruits in these individuals that we're working with, again, regardless of the age. While that seems hard and difficult and challenging to do, we are not doing this alone. Again, there's a community here today, right? And all of you are in this community, and it takes a village. This is a lovely African proverb that says it takes a village to raise a child. It is not the parents alone, it is not the servants alone, it is not the priest alone, it is all of us together as a village to raise this child, or whatever service that you're doing to raise that surface. And if you are working with children, we are teaching them about things to do for themselves, to make themselves successful human beings, and to work towards these children, towards the kingdom, towards Christ, to become servants themselves and to help others. And that is the ultimate goal of service. And one of the best ways to do this is to create roots and wings in our children. So in the one hand, they are to be free to explore their talents and their strengths as we're talking, to explore who they are as people, what God meant for them, and how to put them on what he put they're here for. And we all have a purpose and we all have meaning, but also to ground them deeply and to ground their roots so that they are strong in the faith, to strong in their character, strong in their values, strong in their morals, and then strong in their purpose. So they need to have both roots and wings. If you only have one versus the other, it's not going to be beneficial for them in that regard. So they need to be both roots and wings in this regard. Another thing that we can do to support particularly children or the people that we serve is to teach them optimism, to motivate them to look for what's supposed to be learned in this situation. Yes, to sit with them in times of challenge and pain and difficulty and not to rush through that process, but also to help them to see that there is some optimism in the situation as well. Also to teach them skills of resilience. Again, resilience is a lifelong muscle to grow and to develop. And so there are going to be times where they are very challenged, where they're almost feeling broken or difficult. But our job, again, is to help them to not bounce back, but to learn to adapt and to grow and to be flexible out of difficult situations. When this class is taught in FMP, we talk a lot about strength-based parenting. And again, if you come to take that course, that's the entirety of that semester-long course that we talk about, is how to look at the child's positives in order to improve the weaknesses. But again, it's not just about performance, it is about character, building a strong foundational character so that they can withstand the difficulties and challenges that life sometimes throws our way. And we want to build their abilities rather than just their weaknesses. And this takes effort. And I talk a lot about in the FMP class and in the development class that I teach at the universities is there's a difference between training and teaching. Teaching is to give somebody knowledge. But if you want to mold them, you have to train them as well, to teach them a skill. Training, in fact, is more difficult and takes more effort as you chisel away at this person and mold them into who they are supposed to be. And with children in particular, because we're going to talk across the lifespan here, children have a lot of innocence. They have a lot of openness to the future. Their mind is wide open to the future, and they often lack a focus in time. And these things become challenging things for adults because oftentimes as we get older, we lose our innocence, we lose our openness to the future, and we don't want to waste time. And so there's a clash sometimes between the child's openness and the parents or the servants that are always on track for a certain amount of time. So this causes a little bit of a dilemma in how do we prepare these children out of childhood with their gifts of childhood, but also not dampen these gifts, but also prepare them for the future. And this becomes kind of the push and pull between what the servants and the parents want and what the child wants. And this is why sometimes you see a little bit of difficulty in grounding them in our classes and in our lessons and things like that. When we look at happy children, however, through the research, we find that they have words to express their emotions. Because again, emotions are data. Our emotions are supposed to tell us certain things about what's happening in our life and how to fix those things and how to improve those things. So we have to be able to identify through data, this data of emotions, what is happening in our lives. They also have things to connect their feelings to. I'm feeling this because, or this may be happening because this is happening. The point of that is to have better self-awareness, right? And the more self-awareness we have, the more we can identify what needs to be fixed and what's working and what's not working. Most important thing also is that kids that are happy feel heard and accepted. One of the greatest needs that we have as humans is that somebody understands us, hears us. Think of if you're telling a friend a story of some difficulty going on in your life, and they're just rushing through it and they don't want to hear it, right? Very painful. But if somebody just sits with you and just is present and is empathetic and understands and feels, we feel a lot better when our emotions are validated. Another challenging thing is people that are adults that apologize, right? Is it difficult for anyone here to apologize? It's difficult to apologize, right? Because I have to kind of be humble and understand that I made a mistake, even though I'm the adult and you're the child, and to apologize. But this also teaches that it's okay to apologize if you've made a mistake, and we all make mistakes from time to time, and that we can still work together to correct that mistake, and that's really important. And if you have servants or parents that help them to rephrase, talk through things, think through things, this also makes kids that are happy. Now, there are some earlier researchers in the field of psychology that have really broken down the stages of development, literally from birth until death. And we can spend an entire semester-long course just talking about those 8 stages, okay? But I'm gonna just break it down really briefly and roughly here so that we can, kind of move on to using these tools. But we can spend an entire semester talking about the different age groups and what they mean. But the basic point is, in the early months and early years, even from birth, we are learning how to trust others. If somebody responds to me when I cry, and they come and change my diaper or give me a bottle or cuddle me or give me a blanket because I'm cold or swaddle me, I have learned that I can trust, right? But if we let this child just cry, they've learned to not trust, right? So even at the very earliest stages of life, literally at age 0, right from birth, and I'm not saying you have to respond instantly, but you have to respond within a reasonable amount of time that builds trust in this child, that when I need something, I can cry and somebody's going to respond, all right? And some parents will even tell you that there are different cries for different things. There's a cry for pain, there's a cry for I need to eat, there's a cry for hurt, and so even parents will tell you that there's a language being spoken there if I pay attention, okay? As they get a little bit older, let's say around age 1, they're learning to explore their world, right? And they're starting to walk around and starting to put their fingers in little sockets, right? And so parents are baby-proofing everything. Everything goes to their mouth. Even their feet they put in their mouth. They're just exploring their world, right? And parents, again, can encourage this, right? They can encourage with lots of toys and, books and colorful things and things that make sound. And they can be encouraged to explore their world. A little bit older after that, as they become toddlers, they really start to learn to think on their own. And one of their favorite words is no, right? So this is the first time that they're getting a little bit of power and control over their lives, and they exercise that by powerfully saying no, even at the age of 2 or 3, right? And people call this the terrible twos. But actually what they're doing is expressing themselves. So again, encouraging that. And they're starting to, there's a typo there, it should say shifting from dependence to independence. But they're starting to shift a little bit, as young as 3, from somebody doing everything for me to learning some independence, and that's why I'm saying no, okay? Once they get into preschool and then approaching kindergarten and things like that, they may start interacting with people other than just their parents, right? Now they're being scrutinized by their teachers and by their peers and by their classmates. And this is teaching them something as well, right? But believe it or not, they can be scrutinized and feel defeated by that, or they can learn and adapt and grow through that as well. But definitely by the time they get into school, they're learning how to adapt to the things that are happening around them. By the time we reach elementary and middle school, we're learning to negotiate, to compromise, to do things our own way, and we're starting to have a little bit more understanding of who we are and things like that. And then by the time they reach high school, now they're definitely practicing to become adults. Even the classes that they're taking in high school are very different than middle school, things like financial literacy, and there's all kinds of classes that they can take that prepare them for adulthood, right? And so this is a difficult and confusing stage because they're still kids, but they're trying to work towards being adults. And so much happens in that 4 years of high school. You literally start as a child and you leave as an independent adult, ready for college, ready for work, ready for career, when 4 years earlier you were still a child depending on your parents. So lots of things happen in those first 18 years. And our job is to set a good example with our values, with our dreams, setting a good example in your classrooms, being a good role model, fostering healthy body image. We kind of talked about that with the high schoolers yesterday, and thinking of activities that are very beneficial. If we're criticizing, they're very picky about criticism. It will really impact them very deeply. They almost feel like there is a spotlight on top of their head and everybody's watching everything that we're doing. It's literally called the spotlight effect. And so we don't want to criticize in a way that breaks their spirit or harms them, but to criticize to build and boost up their strengths and to help them to grow into the individuals that they are meant to be. We don't want to be derogatory or negative or sarcastic. We don't want to be so stifling and overprotective, and then that can harm them in general. So those are ways that we can start, to maintain a good family unit if you're a family, but also good with the other servants in your classroom. That is really, really important as well, to present yourself as a united front, that you and the other servants agree on what's happening, and that you're also in collaboration with the parents, especially in these younger ages, in collaboration with the parents about what you're supposed to do. Yes, there are rules, yes, there are consequences, but there is a diplomatic way to teach things versus a harsh and punitive way, and that is never a good idea, okay? So I'm not saying there's no consequences, I'm not saying that there is no consequences for certain actions, but we definitely don't want to be punitive. We want to be uplifting and growing. So let's talk about the three categories of kids first. We're going to talk about school-age kids, then middle school, then high school real briefly, just so you can get a glimpse of what you're looking at here. Just know that the older that they get in school, the more importance they place on their peers and peer interactions, the older and older they get, right? But it literally starts at age 5, as soon as they enter kindergarten, that peers become important, and it becomes more and more and more important as you go through. The beginning of the focus is always on the peer group. A parental or servant influence starts to wane a little bit, but that doesn't mean that you don't have any influence, okay? You definitely have influence, and they look up to your actions and what you're doing. And so start thinking about what you can do and what the expectations are for kids of this age. In order to have good servants, you need to be connected and develop rituals, whether it's with the family or rituals within your classrooms, that will foster good connection and good support. Help them to problem solve. This is going to be really important because it takes a long time for their problem solving to come online, if you will. It takes a long time for that to happen. You want to have similar beliefs and values to what you are teaching. You want to have servants' meetings or family meetings if this is for families. to focus on the values and to focus on things like self-control, and to focus on all of the things that you want to teach them. As you move into serving tweens, tweens are these middle school aged kids, starting as early as age 10, which I believe is like 4th grade. So it's a little bit earlier than middle school, but going all the way through middle school, which is 8th grade. And these kinds of kids like to learn in smaller groups, right? So if you can put them in like small groups where they can interact and do physical, hands-on types of things, these can help as well. And kids become incredibly curious at this age and are strongly influenced still by their peers, by their friends. And they start to think more abstractly, not just in black and white thinking. By this age, morality has definitely developed, but isn't done developing until they're in their late teens. So the knowledge of right and wrong is something that does develop with time. It isn't something that they're just, necessarily born with, or it's automatic, or things like that. There's a lot of research on when morality develops and how it develops. So just real quick as a sidebar here, before age 9, the development of morality is more about not disappointing others, avoiding punishment, that kind of thing. By the time they reach the middle adolescent ages, they start wanting to follow rules. So they're not going to do things wrong because a rule said so. But to know right from wrong truly and have this as a significant value does not develop until late teens, okay? And so there's a lot of emotional development that happens here as well. There is moodiness that starts around the time of puberty. So you may see some immaturity a little bit in the tween ages, or you may see a lack of maturity in some things. For girls, there may be a little bit more moodiness. For boys, there may be a little bit more aggression. And these are common alongside with these middle school type ages. Peer pressure is a big thing as well. And some of the earliest research on peer pressure goes back all the way to 1951. So for at least 70 plus years, we've known that there's been some sort of peer pressure, and people conform to the peer pressure because they want to fit in. So this wanting to fit in is a big part of this as well. And in addition, if this wasn't confusing enough, we are starting physical development, but you will see it a lot more in the adolescent ages. Adolescence is around age 14 or 15 plus, moving forward from here. And as kids are, again, still very confused about who they are, wearing different masks, not knowing who they are, it's really important that we start to develop an understanding of these kids and understanding their unique personalities. Our job is to be the consistent figures in their life because they're in a whirlwind in these middle school and high school years. They're developing physically, they're developing mentally, they're developing spiritually, they're developing socially. Social categories may change. Some people I've heard have friends their entire life that's been their friend, and then all of a sudden in middle school they're not friends anymore, right? Or all of a sudden in high school we don't like each other anymore. What happened? Again, there's a lot of change and turnover that is occurring by this age. So our job is to be the unconditional love, support, open communication, consistency in these kids. We have to listen well. We have to listen to understand, not listen to respond, as we've been saying today, and asking for help because, again, it's a village that raises this child, a village of a community, not just one or two individuals. Now, this is a research that was done by Diane Baumrind on the different styles of parenting. And yes, we're talking about parenting here, but these are styles that people use in interacting with children. The only one that is good up here is the one in yellow, okay? The other three are problematic. They're definitely problematic. The best way to look at this is the amount of expectations or rules. I think I like the word expectations better than rules, but the amount of expectations that you have with children versus the amount of love and respect that you have towards that child. And just because they're 4 or 7 or 18 does not mean that they don't need respect, They still need to be respected at all ages, okay? So I'm going to do the yellow one last, just to kind of explain the bad ones first, and then we'll talk about the best one last. So if you have very little expectations of this child and they can get away with anything, then you are showing a lot of love and a lot of respect, but you're not giving them any parameters. There's no framework of what expectations you have for them, what rules. It's wishy-washy, right? And whatever they do, it's okay, we're going to let it go, and it's fine. And we think that we're doing them a service by just letting it go and they can get away with anything, but it doesn't teach them where the parameters are, okay? So permissive is not good. The next one right below it is neglectful. These are the parents or servants that have no expectations, no rules, no parameters, no boundaries, and no love and respect. So they're just ignored, okay? So these kids grow up thinking, I don't have the parameters and nobody cares about me. If they cared about me, they'd have some parameters, right? And so these kids grow up, again, feeling very neglected and unloved and unsupported. The one on the bottom left is authoritarian, and a lot of people confuse those two on top of each other. Authoritarian is not good either. We want to stick with authoritative, but authoritarian is not good because this is a dictator. This is the person that you have to do what I say. There is no negotiation. You don't have an opinion. There is no love, and there's so many rules, micromanaged. Everything that they do is scrutinized. Everything that they do there is criticized and put down, right? So this is someone with very strict expectations and no love and respect. Also a bad situation here. And then finally, the one that really works is authoritative. And authoritative means you have expectations. We do have expectations. If you're a parent, you have expectations for curfew and grades and the kinds of friends that you're friends with, but you also love them unconditionally, and you support them, and you encourage them, and you lift them up, and you teach them about their strengths. Those things are important. Research tells us that this high expectation fosters dialogue and communication. The parents are warm and responsive and attentive. They know what's going on with their child. The children will come to them with everything from what hairstyle should I wear today, and get their opinion, and they have a discussion about it and all those kinds of things, to bigger things like what college should I go to, or the person that I want to get to know eventually when I'm an adult to marry. So these parents have developed such a good, healthy bond, right? Not an overpowering bond, not a critical bond, a healthy bond with their children that allows them to explore your gifts, explore your talents, explore the good things about who you are. But again, you have roots. Your roots are deeply grounded, which is really important. These parents and kids have mutual respect. The kids respect the parents respect the kids, back and forth. And this mutual respect leads these kids to become successful, happy, generous, and respectful, okay? But then stress hits, all right? And how many of us have felt like this, right? At times. All of us have, I'm sure, right? And we have felt this way in all kinds of situations in our life. So to add to everything I just said, in addition to all this, we sometimes have stressors. And as these kids get older and older, their stresses actually increase. And some of the biggest problems that I face with parents is, oh, they're just kids. They don't know what stress is. They don't have a mortgage. They don't have bills. They don't have deadlines that they have to face at work, or their boss that's on top of them. They do have stressors, I promise you. Their stressors are different than yours, but they have stressors, all right? They have exams. They have peer pressure. They have friends coming in and out of their lives. They have stressors. Think about college. Think about jobs. Think about partners. Think about this. Think about that. They have stressors. So don't ignore the fact that they have stress. Not all stress is bad. Some stress is beneficial, okay? If you had a meeting to prepare for, a little bit of that stress tension will force you to prepare for your meeting, right? It'll keep you focused and motivated, and it's a healthy tension of not doing anything to doing everything. If you don't have any stress, you're going to be inactive or bored. Okay, so there's an optimal level of stress. We have to stay in a place where our coping strategies are higher than our stressors. If it's opposite, and stressors are higher, that's when you're going to feel some of this tension. So if you start to move into orange and red, this is where you're going to be fatigued, exhausted, panicked, angry, burned out. We talked about burnout on Thursday, right? It's because their ability to cope has lessened and the stress has increased, okay? So we don't want that kind of stress. And stress comes from all kinds of things, right? Stress can come from feeling overworked. Stress can come from arguments, finances, health, everyday things like traffic, computers not working, I have a deadline and the power goes out. Those are kinds of the stressors that you have, right? So stress comes from everything. But for kids, there's some specific things that the research tells us where their stress comes from. A lack of self-esteem, body image issues, puberty. And puberty is a long time, folks. It starts as young as 8. On average, it's 11 for girls and 13 for boys and goes all through adolescence. And brain development continues until about age 25. So imagine you start puberty at 8, which is, I know, on the lower end, but let's say if it starts that early, or even 11, which is more closer to average, and continue development until 26. That is 15 years of turmoil and confusion and before things really start to settle. So be patient with them, please. They have academic stressors, they have bullying, they have mental health concerns like depression, relationships, again, friendships, and then not friendships, and then this person's bullying, and then this person's my best friend, and all of these different issues. Peer pressure. Unfortunately, we're also seeing substance use in adolescence, and we are trying to curb some of those issues. And even if it's not substance use, there's sometimes cyber addictions and cyberbullying. And there's all these other issues that maybe when we were younger we didn't have. We didn't have cyberbullying, right? But now our children experience those things. So those are all things to look for. How do we know if they're feeling stress? Majority of kids will either do one of two things. They'll either blow up or they'll shut down, okay? There are other issues that we can notice, but those are some of the biggest ones that you can sense if something is wrong. They may have bodily symptoms of stress, headaches, stomach aches, I don't want to go to school, my stomach hurts, I have rashes. Those are body symptoms of stress. They may have feeling signs of stress, crying, sadness, emotional things. Behavioral signs of stress, again, anger, being volatile, exploding, or being irritable all of the time. And thinking signs of stress, just constant worry and rumination can be something as well. They may also have distorted messages in their mind. Nobody's going to like me. I'm not smart. My friends are better than me in X, Y, and Z. These are distorted messages that can impact them as well. On the outside, they may look happy and fine, and on the inside, they may be really distressed. And ultimately, we can pick up on things like a change in their emotions, a loss of interest in things that they used to be interested in, a change in sleeping habits, low energy, difficulty in interacting, appetite or sleep changes, too much or too little of either of those, or emotions that are all over the place, right? Like up and down, up and down, up and down. And I don't want anyone to think that anyone is beyond help, all right? We help people across the spectrum, whether they're very unwell or they're in the healthy stage and trying to be proactive before a problem starts. All of those are fair game to get help. Obviously, the earlier the better, but any point and stage, no one is beyond not getting help, okay? So if you need the help, please reach out. One of the other things that adolescents experience is confusion in their identity. I don't know who I am. And this is this putting on all these different masks. Am I an athlete? Am I a good student? Am I lovable? Am I the person that everybody dislikes? All of these identity confusion is part and normal that goes with adolescence. Obviously, we don't want their functioning to be interrupted, and so this is something that's really important to discuss as well. Adolescents also want to explore. This is why in high schools there's classes of all different kinds so they can explore different avenues. Again, they need to be grounded and rooted, but also be given wings to explore appropriately, not inappropriately and not with anything, but with parameters. And then again, there's a lot of changes that are coming along their world. They're going from children to adults. This is a period that causes storm and stress, according to a psychologist named G. Stanley Hall, who called this period a period of storm and stress. And oftentimes you will see conflict with parents because they're trying to be more independent. You'll see their moods fluctuate because of biological changes. And you will see risky behaviors because they're trying to fit in. And this isn't for everybody, but if this is going to happen, this is the time frame in which you will see this happen. And so there's a lot of changes that are occurring in our children. And again, we have to be patient. We have to be patient because, again, their minds are still developing, especially this frontal lobe area of the brain, that is the executive functioning part of the brain, is still developing until their mid-20s. So their attention is still developing, their memory, their processing speed, their organization, all of these different things are developing as they go along. And so again, if children are struggling with things and struggling with their life, they're either going to hold in their feelings or act out. They may displace emotions from a friendship that is falling apart onto you. They may regress and act like younger children, even though they're older children. They may have a decrease in their self-esteem, which may become problematic. They may have emotional issues like sadness and anxiety and have difficulty working through these problems as well. So these are all things to look for as well. Another pressure that they may face is academic pressure, and at least 70% of students say they feel stressed by their schoolwork or that they are always worried about their schoolwork and that it affects them in some way. So don't underestimate the challenges and difficulties with academics, and especially as they're getting older and older and older. And then they're getting probably less and less help from the parents as they get older. They may have to seek help from tutors, and all of that, managing all that can be very stressful as well. Another issue of something that they may experience is bullying. And there's different kinds of bullying, right? There's the physical bullying, like actual physical aggression. There's verbal bullying, somebody kind of saying mean things to them, or their feelings are being hurt. There is cyberbullying, where it can happen on social media. And we had a big discussion with the high schoolers yesterday on social media, and how research is telling us that more than 3 hours of use a day is at least correlated, if not directly related, to things like depression and anxiety. So these are all the things that kind of they are experiencing. There's also psychological bullying, which is excluding people from your group, talking about them behind their back, making up rumors. These are all different kinds of bullying that can really harm a child and can impact their future as well. And so in your classrooms, you want to make sure that you have a bully-free zone. If they're being bullied in other places, they should not experience bullying within the walls of our churches, of course. We don't want to be in a place where we're judging. We want to be in a place where we're helping and supporting and encouraging and helping them to develop and understand their talents a little bit better. And so that's really important as well. Even though adolescents and younger are young, they can still experience mental disorders. At one point in my career, I worked in an exclusive children's-only clinic. It was literally people 5 to 21 years old. So kids as young as 5 can be diagnosed with certain mental health concerns. And if I were to explore this slide a little bit more, that too would take a full semester because there are childhood disorders and adult disorders. But this is kind of an umbrella to show you all of the potential disorders that even kids can suffer with. And anxiety is one of the most common. About 18% of Americans have anxiety, okay? So this is a big percentage here that of general fears about things that they can't control and they cannot see. And there's even different kinds of anxiety that people can experience. Obviously, we're not talking about treatments here, but at least refer to somebody if you suspect that somebody may have a mental health concern. They can be treated with medication by a psychiatrist. You can change their lifestyle in terms of nutrition or more sleep or something like that. That can be helped by a counselor. Psychotherapy can be done by a psychologist or a therapist. And then there needs to be also social supports, because we are holistic beings. So maybe they need help with housing, or they need help with food, or they need help with some of those other things, or better relationship with friendships as well. Another big thing that kids experience is peer pressure. And like I said earlier, some of the earliest research on peer pressure goes back to all the way to 1951, almost 70 years ago, where we found that people will conform because they don't want to stand out, even if they know the answer of what they're doing is wrong, right? It is easier to not stand out and just do it than to fall back and say, this is wrong, I'm not doing it. So we want to build some of that boldness that we talked about in the last talk to help them to manage some of those difficulties as well. The next big thing that they're dealing with is relationships. And when I talk to adolescents in general, or even young adults, we talk about these characteristics that are biblical traits of godly friendships, okay? Friendships are sacrificial, meaning they both have to give and take in order for that relationship to work. Friendships have to accept you unconditionally. That doesn't mean that iron doesn't sharpen iron if somebody is doing something wrong, but we need to feel loved unconditionally. Think of, for example, how Christ approached the Samaritan woman, right? Saint Fetini. How did he approach her? With love and compassion, but also named what was wrong in that picture, right? And in doing so, she was accepting of him, and he loved her, and she went back and preached back to her town, her country, right? So she wasn't shamed, but she was supported and encouraged until she was able to come out of that and became a great saint in the church. Friendships also trust. If trust is broken, the friendship is broken. It's that simple. And trust takes time to build. And so if a friendship has been broken and it has to be rebuilt, that's going to take time. So there has to be trust in order to be vulnerable with somebody. And in that vulnerability, there is building. But we definitely don't want to trust the wrong people, because then that vulnerability will be used against you, and it will be harming you and hurt you deeply, right? So we really want to build trust in a Christian perspective, again, of love, of support, of encouragement, and that it's consistent. It isn't fluctuating and flaky, right? And so just like the house that was built on the rock, when the winds and the storm came, it did not knock it down. Friendships do not envy, but support one another. Okay, envy is obviously one of the commandments. They also edify one another, meaning build each other. Friendships are genuine and loyal. They hold each other accountable. They're forgiving. They share in the joys and the sorrows with our friendship. The Bible tells us that friendships are supposed to be equally yoked. Is this the yoke that the Bible's talking about? No. This is the yoke that the Bible is talking about, right? A balanced relationship, because iron is supposed to sharpen iron, all right? And so if this thing is broken or not working correctly, one of the oxen is going to be pulling everything, and the other one's going to kind of just slack off, right? So we want to have a lot of good, equally yoked relationship. Another big thing that children face is cyber addictions. One of the biggest issues that we face, that there's social media, and again, like I said, the use of the phone, if we can hold off as much as possible, and even when we use the devices, to have some control over them, because cyber addictions is one of the most difficult things that we have facing our day and age, especially with a preoccupation with technological activities, with AI, using AI as your therapist. All of these things are incredibly problematic, and we have to have more and more talks about these issues. The way that you can tell somebody has an issue with this, if there's failed attempts to decrease their use, they spend more and more time online, then they become tolerant to it and need even more time online. They lose a sense of time. They start off with, I just need 5 minutes to scroll through something, and then it's like 3 or 4 hours later. If there's been a decline in their sleep, their appetite, hygiene, all of these things, these are all signs that there is a significant problem. And so we really need to help teens with these things A lot of times, families sometimes have perfectionistic expectations. Instead, we should foster resilience to help them to grow through challenges, not be overprotective, not be inconsistent. Consistency is key. And modeling certain behaviors is really important. And if there is any faulty thinking, to repair it. If you've done this well, you should be able to have a good connection with the young adults that are produced out of these situations, because the kids eventually grow into young adults, and serving adults is going to be your next thing. Hopefully you have built a good, solid foundation, that you are patient, know where the boundaries are, be consistent, be empathetic. That's really important. Build your emotional intelligence. And listening is the most important of them all. As we go through this, we need to learn how to also help them with their strengths, which I've been talking about quite a bit today. And the important part of this is to help them to identify where are the positive parts of their personality. And I love this verse from 1 Peter 4:10 that says, "And each one received a gift, minister it to one another as good stewards of the manifold grace of God." So to use those gifts to support other services is really helpful and important. So I can't stress enough the importance of these things that we do for the children. Also, this is from a person named Steinberg, who wrote a book that was really helpful here, that talked about strength-based parenting. And later on this evening, there will be an entire talk on strength-based parenting, so I'll talk more about this in detail this evening. But basically know that what you're doing matters, and that we have to adapt to the child's strengths, not the other way around. So one of the biggest issues is, yes, we have to give the lesson and part of the curriculum in the classroom, and all that is understandable, and that's what you should do. But also notice that certain kids have certain talents, and adapt maybe your teaching to that particular need and challenge, especially if this person is struggling with something, to adapt some of what you're doing to that child's needs and also strengths. And again, it's really important to treat this child with respect. Respect is a two-way street that's really important as well. This is a website, I don't know the current number, but this number has increased over the years. And last I looked at this website, it was 255 ways that you can start a conversation with a teenager, okay? And not just saying, "How was your day today?" They're gonna say fine and walk away, and you're not gonna know anything about what they're actually experiencing. So the number's probably much higher than 255 at this point, but it's a really good way to effectively communicate with our kids. Effective communication includes being very clear, being concise and targeted and focused, allowing everybody's ideas to be on the table, being considerate of people's feelings, needs, families, backgrounds, all those kinds of things. When you are correcting people, do so politely, all right? Not make fun of them or laugh at them for not knowing the answer or any of those things. And then, of course, being connected to the child and to other servants. I would also encourage you, and I think that this is really important, is sometimes as servants we see the issues, okay? That's all we see. We don't see that underneath the surface there's different personalities, there's different emotions, there's different needs, there's different perceptions, there's hidden expectations, unresolved issues from the past, issues at home, issues at school, issues with their peers in and out of church, issues with the world that we live in. Have we turned on the news recently, right? All of this impacts them, but all you're seeing is this kid has issues, right? And we label them as such. Please look deeper. Please look deeper. So before you talk, listen. Before you react, think. Before you criticize, wait. Before you pray, forgive. And before you quit, try again. We've also heard about love languages, right? Before, I'm sure everybody has heard of these. And these initially were for couples, right? But it's not just for couples. Know, if you can, especially with the kids that you are struggling with, what is their love language? Is it to serve them in some way? Is it to give them a gift that is, it doesn't have to be expensive, it has to be personal and speaks to them, to be seen. To be seen is one of the greatest human needs, okay? So is it a gift that will see them and see what they're going through? Maybe they need a pat on the back or a handshake, right? Touch is kind of funny, so be careful with touch with your kids in Sunday school and stuff like that. But maybe they just need a pat on the back, right? Or a handshake or a fist bump or something. And maybe that's their love language, right? So know what their love language is. And some is, or yeah, just like that. And maybe a quality time. Maybe you can take them out for a sandwich or something, or ice cream, or whatever it is. But spending some quality one-on-one time with this kid that appears to be struggling, you may get somewhere. Or words of affirmation, right? My personal favorite is words of affirmation, right? Again, to be seen and to be heard and to be looked at and to be respected. The things that are not going to get you anywhere is yelling, okay? Tone is important. We heard that in the last one, all right? You could be stern even with your eyes, right? You can be stern even with your eyes or with your body language. So be careful, all right? Don't be a broken record saying the same thing over and over again. Yelling is not going to help. And I show this next slide to parents all the time, but it applies to us as servants as well. How you speak to children becomes their inner voice. If you are critical, their inner voice is going to be critical. If you are supportive and loving, their inner voice is going to be supportive and loving of themselves. All right, so don't yell and belittle and put down. And I know when we're frustrated, that may happen. But step back, evaluate, and again, your goal is to raise these kids up. Our goal, again, is also to go from striving to thriving. And we do that by the power of our mind and our faith. And if I had to explain to you resilience again very simply, it is not the absence of difficulty. Resilience is the conscious choice to experience the full spectrum of all the human emotions and to thrive despite them, which is also really important. Help them to reframe their thinking, help them to have gratitude, help them to help others, know their own story of resilience. We've talked about all of these kind of already. Use those 10 positive emotions. Slow down and savor. Don't rush through everything. When you slow down and savor, you're able to kind of experience life a little bit differently and can problem solve really well as a result. And so in doing all of these things, you become resilient on all fronts. On the physical, the psychological, the emotional, the mental, the spiritual, all of those different things are going to be really important as well. Again, here is my favorite picture. It's in all my slides because I love it so much. Again, these kids have potential, and that's really important to remember and to think about. So just some verses here. You know, all things are going to work together for good for those who love God and called according to his purpose. And again, here is my contact information if you would like to connect further after today. Thank you.
So, as a parent, you mentioned something that risk to fit during adolescence. They can risk their life just to fit in the group. They can risk their lives just to fit into the group. So, as a parents, yeah, that you just mentioned. So, as a parents, how can I, at this point, interact like firmly and avoid this risk to happen? Or should I leave and let them take the risk?
If the risk is really dangerous, we don't want them to take the risk, right? If they're going to a bad situation, obviously we have to go in and pull them out of that situation. But also having an open conversation about why we think that this is risky, this is not beneficial. The consequences could be long-reaching, far-reaching, and those are all things that are they're very difficult. At some points, you do need to, if it's really dangerous, to put your foot down and make a decision that you cannot do this. But in situations where it is less risky, Sometimes there are natural consequences that will teach them. For example, if you've told them 100 times to study for their math test and then they didn't study, unfortunately they're going to fail that math test and then they're going to hear about it from school and from their teacher. That is a natural consequence. But if it's something physically or mentally or spiritually dangerous, yes, we have to stop them.
But at this point, I'm not like authoritarian.
Yeah, it's a fine line, right? You don't want to break their spirit. That is more the authoritarian. But at some point, if it is dangerous, especially physically, mentally, or spiritually, we have to stop them from doing it, right? But otherwise, there are going to be natural consequences that they will face if they have not listened to what you have been saying. Good question. Other questions? No?
When you said where there is like certain consequences, you will have to step in to stop them. But this is kind of like very relative from like one parent to another, one family to another. So let's say, I'll give like just a ballpark example. You have a kid that started driving and you decided you are gonna have a curfew for that kid by 10 p.m. every day. But the whole village, which is like basically your closed cycle village, that curfew time is 12 or 1 a.m. So now you are falling between the authoritarian and the authoritative. You want to give them freedom because they want to fit in, they don't want to feel odd. At the same time, you have that obligation as a parent or as a servant to stop this from happening. And it's usually a head-to-head. And this is just a simple example because it can happen so many times when your village have a different point of view than yours. What should you do?
Yeah, I mean, your job is to enforce, as a servant it's different again because something like a curfew is enforceable by parents. And again, there's also society curfews, right? So teenagers can't be out at all hours. You will be taken home by the authorities at some point, right? So those are the natural consequences that I'm talking about. It doesn't matter if another family says midnight or 1 a.m., our family says 10, then we're gonna do 10. And unfortunately, privileges will be revoked and trust is broken if you break that curfew because we have said 10, and again, trust is really important. So if you want me to trust you and to give you that privilege, then you have to comply with what we're talking about. But again, there are also natural consequences, and I've heard about teens that have been brought home by the police for being out too late. So those are those kinds of consequences. I've heard about these kinds of cases, unfortunately.
So, as you said, there are natural consequences if it happens that that trust was broken or just things happen. So what is the role of the parents, the mom and the dad, like how to balance that, not enabling the wrong, but at the same time, I'm still here for you. I still have some hope and I will give you chances and more trust, but at the same time, I'm sad about what happened.
Right. And you can express your disappointment. As long as you're not breaking somebody's spirit, you can express that this is disappointing. I told you not to do this, and you did it anyway. I am disappointed. And there's consequences like, you're not going to be able to do X, Y, and Z coming up because you broke our trust in this situation, right? But it doesn't mean that this is going to last forever. There is grace, there's redemption, there's mercy. There is a rebuilding of trust that can happen. And then with those situations, we will rebuild trust again so that we can trust you to go back to what you wanted to do initially.
Yeah, but at this time of vulnerability, they need the parents, they need the help.
Yes.
But at the same time, the parents themselves are hurt or need the help too. So how they can go together in this.
Yeah, you can tell them that you're hurt. You can say these words. You can express your own vulnerability of your disappointment and your sadness and all of those things, and say, we really have to work to do this because I'm truly hurt by what happened, and it needs to be improved. So
But the child himself needs that too. Like
Yeah.
the child himself is hurt too. So hearing that from his parents,
it's okay to show your emotions. It's okay, because you are a human being and you have emotions and you were hurt. And to avoid this hurt more in the future, let's work together to rebuild. That's what you want to aim for. But expressing your emotions of hurt is completely okay. And them expressing their emotions of hurt is also okay. Let's rebuild from here so that we don't have this issue moving forward.
On that one. How do you distinguish between disappointment and failure? Because what we may say it as a disappointment, but they may perceive it as a failure. So how do you bridge the gap so that we're both at the same understanding? Does that make sense?
You're disappointed, but you still love them deeply, and you want to see them thrive. And oftentimes we learn from our failures. So a failure acknowledged and changed is not going to be a failure forever. It's a failure in this moment, but it's not a failure forever, right? Think about, again, how Christ deals with us. We fail, he loves us, we get molded from that challenge, and we change and improve for the future. This is what we want. We don't want to wallow in that forever. What is the progress that we're going to make in the future so that this doesn't happen again? But it's okay to be disappointed. It's okay to be sad. What did I learn from it? Don't sit in that guilt forever and ever and ever and ever. There's grace, there's redemption, there's repentance, there's all of these things. These are tools to come back and rejoin and do better next time. Does that help?
My bad. Okay, so when I asked about the curfew, I didn't mean the curfew by curfew. It was just an example. So
Yes.
when we're talking about this, I'm talking about the way they started to behave, the way they are dressed, the way they are partying, the way they are going out. Now you are between the line of doing the right for your kid and giving the space for your kid to fit in so he's not emotionally stressed. Where is your line?
The line is where there is a consequence that is going to be very hard to come back from. And I know, again, with dressing for example, or staying out late at a party, we have to explain what the long-term consequences of something like those can be, right? Staying late at a party it can get dangerous. It can get people could be taking pictures, they can post pictures, those kinds of things. So we have to explain where our vision is coming from, not just I'm laying down rules to lay down rules, right? Even the rules laid out for us in the Bible are for our own good, if you really focus on what those rules are. They're for our own good. But human nature is stubborn, and they do their own thing, and then they have a consequence, or they have a problem, and then they try to come back from it. That's the cycle of what humanity is in general. So explaining to them what the far-reaching consequences can be is really important. And yes, there is a struggle, especially in those adolescent years, a lot of pushback, because again, they're trying to fit in. And explaining, I know you're trying to fit in. I know you're trying to find your own style. I know you're trying to do your own thing, but this is why this is a bad idea. And then see how that goes. But forcing is going to be very difficult. It's more about communication and discussion and explaining and showing them what the far consequences can be.
It means like at a certain point you have to walk away from enforcing the rule, or you just have to let go, or what? Okay.
No, you can enforce the rule, right? Especially if they're still, at home and this is your home, you're allowed to enforce the rules, right? And but it's about explaining and not breaking them in that process is what's important.
So when enforcing the rules, should the parent be more leaner when he feel like there will be a breakdown from the child, or like a little bit leaner just to hold the situation and then we can reinforce the rule or stress on it?
Adolescents may be all over the place. Your job is to be consistent. This is my rules, this is my values, this is my beliefs, and I have to be consistent and grounded in those. They're going to go back and forth, right? But home base has to be stable. What my values and my rules are don't change. My integrity doesn't change, right? But these are the rules. If you divert away from that and then you try to come back, we have to talk about that, and we have to talk about, again, redemption and repentance and all of those things. But I have to be consistent. I have to be consistent. My rules don't change. Very hard. Yeah, adolescence is tough. Thank you.
We really thank Dr. Christine for coming and blessing us. And I think we all need to, I know it's hard, but come back again at 7. She's going to continue with the parenting topic from 7:15 to 8:30 in the Vineyard meeting. And this is the last time for the Vineyard meeting for June and July. So God willing, going to resume after the Nahda for the Bible Academy. In August, for the Bible Academy and the hymns and the Vineyard meeting. So really thank you on behalf of Abuna Mina. I couldn't make it today because he's covering in Nashville, Tennessee. So he has a bit of a flight. So we thank you so much, Dr. Christine, for coming. And this is a very small token of appreciation on behalf of all the servants. And it's definitely Abuna Mina first.
Thank you. Done enough. Thank you, Abuna. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you so much. And as I said, she's going to give us a meeting tonight and then tomorrow also after the liturgy. Hopefully finish on time. And then we're going to have from 12 to 1 the session with her and with the parents and the middle school kids in the building hall. Inshallah, she's going to give us a talk tomorrow to the kids and parents. Also celebrate a couple of good events. On Sunday, March 29th, right? We celebrated the baptism of Chris and Rolf. And everybody knows, Rolf and Sarah. Sorry, Chris was somebody else. Sorry. Ralph and Sarah, so they joined the church. They're a wonderful couple, and they have Nico, their kid. I don't know if you saw Nico. He comes to the Sunday school, and which grade is he in? Second grade? First grade? Yeah, he's a wonderful kid, and the servant here love him, and he's very active even in the hymnology of the church and Coptic and stuff like that. So we thank God we're so blessed with catechism class. We have Andrew here serving the catechism class. So we have today from those who recently baptized, Michael, and Chris and Madai, and who else? Sarah and Rolf, definitely. So we're on behalf of Abuna Mina and all the congregation, we give them a simple gift to welcome them. And God willing, you're going to see them all serving in different capacities in the church. So soon they will be integrated also to the services, and they will be joining us in the different services of the church. And after we pray, there is a cake in Abuna Cruz's office here for Rolf and Sarah and everybody. If you can join, so we can eat, is to celebrate their baptism and them joining the church. Also, we celebrate today during the Great Fast we had a new service which was called like the book reading, and we read together the life of Saint Anthony. And today we're going to distribute the gifts of this service for those who answer the questions. So we have Dr. Marcel, she's not here. Kiruji is not here. Marianne Gabra, she's here. We have Maria Isaac, she was here, but I think she left. We have Michael Gomez. We have Justina Simon, she's not here. We have Chris. So Chris is here, and Sarah's here as well. So thank you. What else? Did I miss anything? So we have here also on your way, we have the gifts of the resurrection feast, the Agaibi. And if you didn't take one, please come. We have one all English, and we have other which is English and Arabic together. So finally, I want to really thank you for coming. I know everybody's busy today with the graduations and many things around and engagements and stuff, and everybody's finish school and stuff. So thank you for being willing to learn. And this is very important for any servant to be willing to learn, because it's okay, we are all need help, but if we need help and we're not seeking to learn, we're seeking this help that we need, it's a problem. So I'm so thankful for every one of you who came today and took of his time on a Saturday morning to attend, for those who came the liturgy or those who came even for the talk itself. Thank you for coming, and thank you also for those who brought food and arranging food and all of this. And hopefully we do this again and again, because we all, me first, need to learn and improve and learn more and more, and to be better parents and better servants and better Christian as well. So any questions or anything? So we pray now, and if we can join us for the cake for Sarah and Rolf. Sorry, yes, Sarah and Rolf, sorry, to eat together. I keep saying different name, I'm tired, sorry. So, and then we pray, and then hopefully if we can come back, it will be great to continue tonight the parent talk. So let's pray, مع بعض. تفضل. Alleluia, 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 بخريستوس أفتن فيبول خني اسمه أوتو هافشنا بشويني في أوي. This is he to whom the glory with his good Father and the Holy Spirit, both now. Finally, thank you, Lord, for everything. Thank you for allowing us to be here in the church. Thank you for sending us Dr. Christine to bless us and to teach us. Bless all the servants who are standing before you. Teach us how to be faithful and wise servants. Please bless all those who got baptized, and those also bless the event tomorrow of the Global Coptic Day, and bring many people to your vineyard, and bless every effort through the prayer and intercession of Saint Mary, the Mother of God, Saint Mina, the wonder worker, and the blessing of the feast of the Pentecost. Hear us and bless us and pray thankfully. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those trespass against us. Lead us not temptation, deliver us from the evil one. Now the love of God the Father, the grace of his only begotten Son, our Lord God and Savior Jesus Christ, the gift and the communion of with you all. Go in peace. The peace of the Lord be with you all. Amen. Again, if you didn't take the gift of the resurrection, come take it. And if you can join us also